Hello, David here, and the project for today is changing the oil on the 2015 Honda Fit. And the way you know you need an oil change, if you look over here on the dashboard, when that yellow wrench lights up, that means you need to do something with maintenance. And this is preset for a 6,000 mile oil change. And if you push this button here, this tells you, whoops, I skipped it. Go back. That 15% on the oil life over there tells you got 15% left to go on your oil. And then you go to odometer by pushing this button, that button right there by my thumb. That takes you to the miles. There's 5,795 miles, which means Honda suggests changing the oil at 6,000 miles. So if you're a skeptic like me, you're probably wondering, yeah, they say 6,000 miles because they want you to buy a new car in a shorter amount of time. How come on your Ford you change it every 3,000 miles and the manual says you could change it 6,000 miles? Well, my Ford uses conventional motor oil, and that doesn't quite get the life that synthetic motor oil gets. Although the Honda Fit manual doesn't come out and say you need synthetic motor oil, they do say to use 0W-20W weight motor oil, and that oil does not come in conventional motor oil. It only comes in synthetic. So pretty much have to use synthetic on this car. That's the way it was designed, and the independent mechanics that I follow all pretty much say that that synthetic motor oil does give you more life. So I do trust the 6,000 mile oil change schedule, and that's what I'm going to do on this car, and I'm going to remain using conventional motor oil on my Ford at a 3,000 mile interval change. Okay, let's lift the hood. Should be a prop rod here somewhere. There it is. Goes there. There's the oil filled. The oil fill cap. I'm going to take it off just to allow the oil to flow out quicker. Put it on the side. That's the oil change. That's the dipstick. Just looking for markings on there. I've never seen it before. I don't see any markings at all. Usually they tell you what weight motor oil to use. I know it's 020 because that's what the manual says. And the engine has been driven. It's been warmed up. So it's always best to change your oil after you've warmed up the engine. The impurities from the oil seems to flow out better when it's warm. So that's why that's warm. And let's get underneath and we'll find the drain plug. If you want a close-up of that, I know that was kind of a far view. Take a look at it right there. And right there is where the oil fill cap is, and that's the dipstick. Unfortunately, there's no central point to jack up the car from the front, so I'm going to have to jack it up in two places from the side. And what I've used is jacked it up from this pinch weld right under the front of the door, which is right there. See that? And then I'm using for the jack stand, the jack stand point will be this hard point here, which is the, it looks like it's a subframe for the motor. It's a pretty beefy part of the suspension. I can't find anywhere else where there's a lot of support. I think this part seems to be pretty beefy as well. You could probably put a jack stand around this point. I wouldn't put it here. This doesn't look strong enough. But that point does look strong. This part is strong. This would be good. Now I'll do the other side. Okay, car's up in the air, securely on jack stands. Always test your jack stands and make sure that the car won't fall off and kill you. The way to do that is just bump the side of the fender to make sure that it's secure. It's better to have it fall without anyone under it than having it fall under you. So you think you got it home free, huh? Well, look at that. There's some kind of cover covering access to the underneath of the engine, and got these Phillips head screws. I'm going to start removing these screws to take this access cover off, and we'll see what we have underneath there. There are 8 screws, and then you could let it drop down, and then you notice in the front there's some little lips there. You just slide it out to the rear. Slide it out to the rear. There we go. And it'll just fall down out of the way. So here we have access to the oil filter. I'm very happy to see that the oil filter is not horizontal, but it's at a slight angle, and I will show you later why I'm happy about that. This is the oil pan right here, and you can see that writing upside down. It says engine oil. This will be our drain for that engine oil, and I'll get a wrench for that. I'm also happy that the oil drain plug is to the rear of the engine, because when you have the car jacked up, when they put the plug at the front of the engine, you're not getting all the oil out of there. And so what I've done on some cars is I've jacked it up, put it on stands, drain the oil through the drain plug in the front, and then while it's draining I jack it back up, take it off the stands, let it down to a normal ride height, and let the rest of the oil drain out. So I don't have to do it this time. Another thing I like to do is I take a tire marker and I write the wrench size. This is a 17 millimeter. So I'm just going to take my tire marker and write 17. Because I'm an old guy, I tend to forget stuff. If I come back and look at that, I'll know it's going to take a 17. Good to have a paper towel handy, because this might get drippy. I got my drain pan here, and we're going to go, of course, counterclockwise. Oh man, I got that on tight. There we go. A lot of times they tell you to change this gasket here every oil change. I do it when it starts getting drippy. I find that I could get about 4, 5, 6 changes between gaskets. I don't see a need to change this gasket every time. It is an aluminum gasket. Oh, there we go. I'll let it drain out. You don't need to watch all this and waste time. Okay, oil's drained and the plug is back in. Time to tackle this oil filter. See, it's going to go that way, so I got to turn the handle this way. Got the strap wrench. That wasn't on so tight. Gotta get the drain pan directly underneath it. I better move this camera back a little bit. I don't want to splash you guys. Okay. Yeah, and the oil's running right over my new marking for the 17 millimeter wrench. How about that? There we go. Oh, always make sure that the filter comes, or the gasket comes off with the filter. If not, then it could be stuck up there and it'll create an air pocket when you put the new oil filter on, and that's a bad thing. That means all your oil will leak out when you start the motor, and if you're not watching it, you're going to run your motor dry. That's a bad thing. I'm going to put in a Napa 37356 filter for replacement. Cute little thing, it almost looks like a toy. And the oil I'm going to use is, I always use Valvoline, so I'm using some Valvoline Synthetic 020. And remember before I said I was happy that the oil filter wasn't horizontal. It's more vertical. It is at a slight slant. And the reason for that is I always prime the filter when I do oil changes when I can. because when you start up the engine right after oil change, the oil has to fill up an empty oil filter, so your engine's running without oil pressure for a few more seconds. So as much oil as you can get in here to decrease that time lag in which the engine's building up oil pressure, the better. I think it's my theory that you get more life out of an engine the less you run it with low oil pressure. So even when I have a horizontal oil filter like the old Honda 4 cylinders and the Acura Integra we had, I used to put a few ounces of oil in here because the paper element would absorb some of that oil. So if I could get about, I don't know, 3 or 4 ounces in there, you just get it so that it could hold oil without it dripping out when it's perfectly horizontal. That still gives it a little more time. So I'm going to fill up this filter. Maybe I should use a funnel. Wouldn't that be smart? Make less of a mess. This is a 5-quart container, and the engine holds 3.5 quarts. So let's put a little bit in there. And you got to wait a few minutes because that water will absorb the oil. So even though when you first put oil in there, it's going to be filled to the top, you wait a while, it'll eventually soak down and you can add a little bit more. But this is a small filter. It won't take long to fill it with oil. And then take some fresh oil and rub it all around this gasket on here to make it wet with oil. That gives you a better seal. Okay, I got the oil filled. I got the oil filter primed with some oil. I've got the gasket moistened with some oil. Can't show you because it'll tip it over and all the oil will fall out. You can see my fancy markings on the oil pan were washed off when I cleaned off that oil. I do like the access to this oil filter. It's easy to get to and see, and can make sure the old gasket hasn't stuck to the mating surface. So let's get this thing on there. And get it hand tight. There we go. Okay, we're ready to start filling the oil. I'm going to put the funnel in the oil fill. It doesn't go down too far, does it? So if I have 5 quarts here and it takes 3.5 quarts, that means I want to have 1.5 quarts left in the container. This side is quarts, that's 1 quart. 1.5 quarts will be somewhere around there. So I'm going to pour oil into there until I get to about there. Okay, I've got what I feel is about 3.5 quarts of oil in there. I'm going to put the cap on. And I'm going to start it up, but I'm not going to put the car down on a level surface yet. Because while it's running, first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the low pressure oil, the oil low pressure light goes off within a minute. If it doesn't and stays on, there's a problem. And then once it goes off while it's running, I keep it running and I run up front, take a look, make sure there's no oil streaming out. That's something I learned in high school auto shop, and it's something I've always done all these years. I've known people that have changed their oil and they didn't check it, and they've ruined their engines by found out that they didn't have a gasket in place or something and all the oil ran out. So I'm very careful about that. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, starting up. Low oil rate's off. So that pressure built up quick. Take a look underneath, make sure nothing's leaking. Okay, oil filter's dry. Oil drain is dry. Okay, I could drop the car. Whoops, I'm going to put the splash shield back on, and then I'll drop the car to the ground. But first I'm going to start the motor. Okay, the car is level. I like to let the car sit for about an hour after I run it, just to let the oil go down into the oil pan, and then I check the oil level. Just to make sure that got the oil level proper. See where the oil level is on this thing. Okay, can you see that? I think it's in between these two marks, and it's halfway between the two marks. I'm going to check the owner's manual, see if it's full on the on that mark. If it's full on that mark, I'll bring it up a little bit. If it's supposed to be in the middle, I'll just keep it where it's at. Of course, the job isn't over until the paperwork is complete. I hope you guys are keeping a maintenance log of your vehicle and you're recording everything you're doing, the date, the mileage, and what the operation was. It's really helpful for a mechanic when you need to check on the maintenance history of your vehicle. Also helps your memory. If a part goes bad, you might have something that's still under warranty when you've replaced the part the last time, and you might be able to get it back and get a free replacement. Also, there's another thing to do. You turn on your ignition without turning the motor on, and you set this knob until you get to the oil life indicator, which is right there. And we need to reset that maintenance reminder, and the way to do that is to hold this knob for 10 seconds. So let's give that a try. Okay, that's 10 seconds. It's blinking. What's that mean? We could press it again for 5 seconds. Let's try that. Oh, there we go. Okay. It's 10 seconds plus 5 seconds. We're back to 100%. And the job is now complete. Oh, by the way, on the dipstick, those two marks, those holes in the plastic end of the dipstick, the hole on the left was the low level mark, and the hole on the right was a high level mark. As long as you're in between those two marks, you're fine. I like to be a little closer to the full end, so I did add a little bit of oil to bring it up to about 1/4 of an inch within that the full maximum oil level mark. So best of luck to you guys. See you later.